Hello, everyone. Good morning from Vienna. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day today. Let's see where people are tuning in from. This is my favorite part. Let's see, we got folks tuning in from England. Good morning from England. Guten Morgen aus Hamburg, New Zealand, Scotland, Zambia, Australia, Hungary, Germany, Nigeria, Hungary, Jamaica. Hey, cool. Italy, the United States. Oh, must be late there. Hope you are getting enough rest. Remember that these videos are recorded so you can follow along at your own pace. You already know that if you've been doing this for a while. Welcome to week 4 of the free JavaScript Bootcamp that we are doing in collaboration with Class Central and FreeCodeCamp. If you're tuning in, if you just stumbled upon my Twitch and you're wondering, like, what's going on? Let me first say hi. My name's Ramón. We're doing this free JavaScript Bootcamp. Again, everything is recorded and stored on YouTube, so you can go to classcentral.com where you can sign up for the bootcamp. Even though we're halfway through, still means you can sign up and catch up on your own pace. Now, if you're thinking, well, this is nice, but it's really tuning in late, what we usually do is we time these in collaboration with Jessica, who's doing the web development bootcamp and is a far kinder and more patient and better teacher than I am. We alternate these so that they can be in different time zones and folks can access this better live. So, but you're here, you want to sign up, you can go to freecodecamp.org. We'll be working towards the JavaScript data structures and algorithms certification, which you can get for free by doing the 5 projects. If you want to chat to your fellow learners, there's lots of people signed up for this, and you can chat to each other here on group.classcentral.com. Ask questions. I want to say thank you so much to folks who have taken the time to answer loads of these questions. Answering questions is really a fantastic way to learn because explaining those concepts forces you to build that understanding, which I find really helpful. You can do the same on Discord. We've got a Discord community as well. You can go there, ask and answer questions. We have a code of conduct. We expect all learners to abide by this. If you find anybody not abiding by those rules, please report that and any other issues you might have to bootcamp@class-central.com. And I think that's all from me. Oh, let's see. We've got some more folks tuning in from Spain. Another one from Spain. Carlos is wondering how everyone's doing. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing great myself. It's a Monday. But yeah, I hope everybody's having just a wonderful day, no matter where in the world you are. All right, let's jump right into what we'll be doing. I'll be sharing my screen here, and today we're going to be focusing on the debugging portion of the FreeCodeCamp JavaScript data structures and algorithms section. I'm just gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna throw a link into that so that you're all, up to speed. And just a quick recap of where we are so far. So this is what we've completed so far. My goodness, we've completed a lot. Let me collapse this. Cool. So far we've done the basic JavaScript module. We've done the ES6 module. We've done the regular expressions module. And today we'll be starting with the debugging module. We've also, let me scroll all the way down, done 2 of the JavaScript algorithms and data structures projects. You need to do all 5 of these in order to qualify for the certification from FreeCodeCamp. Now, this isn't required to be done within the 6 weeks of this bootcamp. The great thing is that you can do this at any time. So if you're, for example, following along the live streams at your own pace, totally fine. Remember, all of this goes on YouTube as well. So you can catch up at your own pace. All right, so let's talk about debugging. And if you're not familiar with the term, I'm going to expand on it just a little bit. As you've probably seen me do a lot, when I'm writing code, I will inevitably make mistakes. And then I will need to look thoroughly and hard through my code to find those mistakes and fix them. And just like you might have heard as an error in coding as bugs, the name debugging means removing those bugs. And that is what we're going to be doing today, learning some techniques for stepping through our code, finding any issues, fixing them. And most of the time when you're doing debugging, these bugs will come in either the forms of syntax errors. That is, you might have made a typo, you forgot to close a bracket, maybe you used the wrong kind of bracket, maybe you put in a dot where you shouldn't have, or maybe you put in a letter or a number, maybe you started a variable name with a number. I've been there. There's also something called a semantic error where, the logic of your code doesn't follow along with what you want it to do. Maybe you looped through the wrong array, or maybe you accessed the wrong member of an array. Maybe you put in the wrong symbol into your object, the wrong property into your object. Maybe you manipulated the wrong property, especially in certain exercises, record collection. Yeah. Or again, semantic can also mean, your code is not quite doing what you expect it to do. Maybe it's following the wrong step. So what I'm getting at is this happens to everyone to such an extent that if you're making bugs, don't worry, we're all there. In fact, this is such a prevalent thing because a computer only does what we tell it to do. It's not going to magically assume what we're trying to say yet. So this is why we've developed a set of techniques called debugging that we're going to be looking into today. So today we're going to be going through as many of these as we can. The rest I will leave as homework for tomorrow. And we will jump right in by using the JavaScript console to check the value of a variable. Now the JavaScript console you've been using a little bit. Excuse me for a sec. Where was I? Yes. So we've been using the JavaScript console in a way so far. What we've got here, on the left, we've got our exercise. On the right, we've got our code. But at the bottom, we have a console. And in this context, this console is going to print out everything that we console log. And that's what our console is constantly doing in the background. But did you know you actually have, no matter what browser you have, I want to say the vast majority of browsers have their own console outside of FreeCodeCamp. For example, Chrome and Firefox have it. I'm using Google Chrome here, but you'll find it in Firefox. In Safari, you'll need to go and manually activate the developer tools. If you look up something like Safari activate developer tools, you'll find it. The way to do that. And yeah, this lets us, take a look at, interact with, and debug our code. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. We've got a variable called A, a variable called B. We do an A++ on A. We sum A and B and store it in a variable called sum AB. And we console log that sum AB, which 5 + 1 + 1 is 7. And that's cool. But here's the thing. Outside of FreeCodeCamp, we have access to being able to look at the value of our console logs as well. And this is where the developer tools will come in. So what I'm going to do, I hope everybody can see this. I'm going to go to the top right of my Google Chrome where there's this ... menu. And I will go on, more tools. And then I'll go on developer tools. I'm afraid I can't make this menu bigger. I'm sorry, folks. So I'm going to describe it again. ... menu, more tools, developer tools. We will click on developer tools and that'll bring up a new thing here on the side. Yeah. And this here is the developer tools. You know what I'm going to do, folks? I'm going to move that just a touch so that it can be on the bottom of my window so we can have more space to read it. Yeah. And here you'll find lots of stuff. Yeah, I figured you wouldn't be able to see the menu. I'm very sorry about that. That's just screen sharing. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do there. But yeah, if you click on that, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. My logo is blocking. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you click on this ... menu here, you should be able to see the menu and click on it. Now, the contents of the menu, because of screen sharing, you're not going to be able to see, but that's okay. You should be able to get the gist of what I'm doing. What's important is that you see the dev tools here. I will sometimes call them dev tools. I'll sometimes call them developer tools. But yeah, You should see perhaps some errors there, and you'll be able to have a little console here. So in this console, we have access to JavaScript. We can write JavaScript here. Let's say const hello world equals hello world. I've created a variable. Then I've hit enter. Notice that it says undefined. That's because this expression didn't return anything, but it still stored that variable. In fact, if I do console.log, you'll see there's auto completing happening. Console log hello world. Okay, once I hit enter, you'll see that it printed out hello world. But here's something interesting. When I console log anywhere in my app, let's do console log hi. Check it out. Calling console log inside my website will still print out to the developer tools. So when you're usually doing console logs in your websites, you'll see it show up here in the developer tools. Just something I wanted to show you. I'm going to go ahead and close that by clicking on the X here. And let's look at our exercise. Use the console log method to print the value of the variable a where noted in the code. Okay, can do that, no problem. We'll use console log, and we've been using console log a whole lot, so it's not something horribly unfamiliar. So console log a will show up as 6. Let me just open up those developer tools again. Check it out. There's our 6. So that's how that works. Let's go ahead and run our tests. And there we go. Give myself a little pat on the back for doing that one. Pat yourselves too, folks. And let's submit and go to the next challenge. So in this one, we're going to be taking a look at the differences between the FreeCodeCamp and browser consoles, because there are some differences. The console behaves a little bit differently than the browser console. There are many methods to use with console to output messages. Log, warn, clear, to name a few. The FreeCodeCamp console will only output log messages. So that's this console here at the bottom right. Let's give that a try. Console.log output. Get this to show once in the FreeCodeCamp console and not at all in the browser console. Okay. When you make changes to your code, it will automatically run and show the logs. We've seen that. The FreeCodeCamp console is then cleared each time your code runs. First, open your browser console so you can see the logs. So I usually do that through this menu here. Okay. And you'll see there's still the leftover logs from before. That's totally fine. To do that, you can, check it out. You can right-click the FreeCodeCamp navigation bar at the top and click Inspect in most browsers. Then find the console tab in the window that opens. We have that open here. After that, use console log to log the output variable. We can see that. Perfect. View the two consoles to see the log. Finally, use the console.clear after your log to clear the browser console. View the difference in the two consoles. Okay, so we've done the console log already, but now we want to use console clear. See what happens. Now that's a function, so we're going to add our brackets. Now let's take a look. First off, you'll notice the console in FreeCodeCamp is still printing. No problem. But notice what's happening in the browser. In the browser, it says console was cleared. This is because console.clear will do its thing in the browser console, but not in the FreeCodeCamp console. So if at any point you notice that your console in the browser is getting too cluttered with stuff, you can call console.clear, and that'll clear it up for you. That's what this exercise is trying to do. With that done, we can go ahead and run our tests. And there we go. Pat. Let's go to the next one. Now you remember some of you folks were curious in the first couple of lessons where we were wondering what kind of types things are. Do you remember? So So different symbols, different variables, different values in JavaScript represent different types, right? For example, and we can play around with type of here to see what these things are. Console.log. Let's start with 7. Type of. Sorry, we're going to use this keyword type of. Notice it's not camel case, huh? This is just because it is a quirk of JavaScript that got left over. This is one of the few cases where you'll find that something is not camel case. So don't forget type of all lowercase. So we've got a variable 7, we've got a variable 3, we've got a console log of 7 plus 3, and then we've got a console log of type of 7. So there's 73. That's kind of weird. And we've got number. That's because 7 is a value whose type is number. Let's try different values. Let's try that 3 variable. That's a string. What about true? Boolean. What about an object? Well, that's an object. But what about an array? It's also an object. It's a bit weird, but arrays to JavaScript are objects as well. But to us coders, we know that that's an array. There are other types of primitive, that is, immutable data types that JavaScript will recognize. We've seen Boolean already. There's null. Well, let's try it. Type of null. Is it null? There we go. Oh, that's giving us object. I wonder how I can get null. We can read up on that on MDN later on. It's not a huge problem. What about undefined? So undefined's type is undefined. We got number, string, symbol, which is new with ES6, big int, which is a big integer, and one for immutable items, object. Cool. In JavaScript, arrays are technically a type of object. Yeah, Sally's wondering what's up with the capital N in null. I think we're going to have to go into MDN later on to look into this. But let's go into our exercise. Add 2 console log statements to check the type of each of the 2 variables, 7 and 3 in your code. So console log type of 7 and console log type of 3. And as we saw before, 7 is a number and 3 is a string. There we go. Let's do ourselves a little pat and keep going. So you might see this pop up every now and then. FreeCodeCamp is open source and free and lives off of donations from folks. If you see this and you can afford a couple bucks a month, feel free to do so. It's highly appreciated. But if you can't, remember, this is also a learning process, and you can do so at a later time if you like. I myself am donating from a different account. I had to create a new one so I could do this boot camp. So I'll just go ahead and click on Ask Me Later. Cool. So what we can do with these is start looking into typos. Because let's have a look. Console log and type of methods are the 2 primary ways to check intermediate values and types of program output. Now it's time to get into the common forms that bugs take. One syntax level issue is that fast typers can commiserate with is the humble spelling error. This is something that I come into quite often. I make a lot of typos. So what have we got here? We've got a variable called receivables, which is set to 10, payables set to 8. Net working capital is equals to receivables minus payable. And we're doing a console log of net working capital is, and then we're doing the value of net working capital. Now, the way I usually go through this debugging process, right? Let's first take a look at the error. Reference error. Receivables is not defined. By the way, folks, this is a collaborative process. So if you see the error before I do, please point it out. So receivables is not defined, which is odd. This is telling me that the variable receivables has not been defined, which I would disagree with, because in line 1, there is the variable receivables. However, let's have a look at what's going on there. Let's console log receivables. Just copy paste that. And I'm still getting that error. Receivables is not defined. And some folks are already pointing it out. Take a look at this. FreeCodeCamp and a lot of editors are very helpful in, take a look, there's some triple dot below the R in receivables. And if you hover over it in some editors, unfortunately not in FreeCodeCamp, you'll notice that it'll say, hey, this variable doesn't exist. What's up? And folks are pointing it out. Michael says receivables instead of receivables. Receivables, then receivables. Aravinth is being super helpful in saying, hey, in line 3, receivables is misspelled. Michael also says payables instead of payable. So we've got a couple ways to find this. You'll see that. Oh, let's try type of as well. Receivables. See, there we're saying, see, type of lets us see. Okay, receivables is undefined. So we can take a look at the spelling and see that receivables is spelled with an EI, not with an IE. So I will change that around. Now take a look. Now we're getting type of receivables is a number. So I'll fix that here. Next, payable is not defined. And same goes. Payable, undefined, as Sally's saying here, payables, and then not pluraled S. And we can see that in line 3, we've got that little dots there, and payables is missing its S. If I put in the S, it'll say number, so we're good. There we go. Now the code can run without errors and show us that the net working capital is 2. Fix the 2 spelling errors in the code so the net working capital calculation works. So we just did our first bit of debugging in collaboration with the chat. Thank you very much. Let's run our tests. We'll see that it works. Give ourselves a little pat and keep going. Next, we're going to be catching unclosed parentheses, brackets, braces, and quotes. I'm sure we've all been there. Perhaps even in this bootcamp, it's happened to me several times where when I create a pair of parentheses or square brackets or quote marks or curly braces, that we forget to add both the beginning and the end, the opening bracket and the closed bracket. Especially when you've got several of these inside a line, when you're calling a function inside a function, it can get quite daunting. So what a lot of editors nowadays will do is automatically provide one for us. Check it out. Let's define an array, my array. Now you notice when I press the square bracket, it'll automatically put both the closing and the opening one, which is really cool. That helps me avoid making that mistake of forgetting to close it. And a lot of coding editors will do that. But again, the debugger lets us, our debugging process helps us find that. For example, syntax error unknown, unexpected token, expected, comma. And check it out. The console will even give us like some helpful hints. Here it's saying like, hey, there's an error on line 1, let my array, and it's pointing here. It's like, hey, you put in a semicolon. But really, I wanted a comma because JavaScript thinks, oh, you want to put more stuff in this array, obviously, because you haven't closed it. So as people are saying, yes, Sally's saying missing close bracket on line 1. And you'll notice that there's even a little squiggly red underline under my under my semicolon there. That's really telling us like, hey, there's something missing here. So you take a look and you go, oh yeah, opening bracket 1, 2, 3. I'll put in my closing bracket. Now you'll notice, hey, there's no more red lines. Fabulous. But we still got errors. Let's have a look. We expand this just a touch. A little bit more. Great. Cool. So let's see. Let array sum, my array, we're saying like, hey, unexpected token, I expected a comma. In line 2, Oh, I will catch this question from Asante because it's a good question. Does the concept of debugging run on a top-down approach, meaning if there's an error at line 1, the error at line 2 is not identified until the error at line 1 is fixed? That's a great question because you saw it happen. First, the first error it encountered, it stopped. It was like, I'm not going any further from here. There's an error in line 1. I'm not going any further. When I fixed line 1, then the code went, hold on a minute. There's an error on line 2. I'm not even going to get to the console log yet until you fix this error on line 2. So let's have a look at that line real quick. Oh, so yeah, to answer your question, Asante, yes, it is top down most of the time. Let array sum equals myArray.reduce. We touched on reduce. We're going to get to reduce when we get to functional programming. Then we define its parameter. We see there, open bracket, close bracket. Then we have an arrow function that takes in 2 parameters, previous and hold on a minute. Previous and current, there's my 2 parameters, but there's no closing parenthesis. Even though it's pointing here, it's like, hey, there's a semicolon, we can see by reading the line that, hold on a minute, the missing parenthesis is missing. The closing parenthesis of the parameters of this arrow function is missing. So I'll do that. Whew, okay. Now that we've done that, previous and current is now successfully parenthesized. We've got our arrow function that returns previous plus current, and there's our closing parenthesis. And actually, check this out. This is something really helpful as well. When I put my coding cursor here after the closing parenthesis, check it out. It's saying like, this is the partner parenthesis. You notice that I highlighted this one here to say like, hey, this is the corresponding opening parenthesis. When I do it here, same thing applies. And it also works with opening parentheses. There we go. Yeah, so that can be really helpful. And Carlos has a tip for us. I always start writing methods like this. So you write the empty function first to avoid that bug. And that's pretty helpful. Thank you, Carlos. Yeah. So we've fixed the 2 pair of errors in the code. We've already done that. So we can run our tests. And there we go. Pat. Let's go to the next one. All right, so we've got a mixed usage of single and double quotes here, and we've been here before. Having the 2 choices between the single and the double quote is super helpful because that lets us have a combination of single and double quotes. But the problem is it can be a little bit confusing to have the 2 of them because then they get mixed and then things get the 2 gets mixed and then things get confusing and or kind of difficult to debug. So let's take a look at some examples of mixing quotes. I'm just going to expand this side here. So we got Groucho contraction. I've had a perfectly wonderful evening, but this wasn't it. Now we'll see. We've got opening and closing double quotes. And inside that string, we're using single quotes. That way we can do, what are they called? Apostrophes. We've got a quote in string, where again we use apostrophe, the double quotes. Groucho Marx once said, quote me as saying I was misquoted. There's the single quotes, which again are not a string because they're used inside a double quote string. Then we've got this one, uh-oh, Groucho. We've got a single quote string, and notice what happens here. There we go. Even though we want to use this as an apostrophe, because we used a single quote here, JavaScript goes, okay, there's your string. Right? So the rest is like, I have no idea what these symbols are, but they sure as heck are not a string. Oh, but hey, look, a single quote. There's another string. There you go. So this is an incorrect use of quote marks. The first 2 are correct, but the third is incorrect. Of course, it's okay to use only one style of quotes. You can escape the quotes inside the string by using the / character, which we've seen before. So if we want to fix that, we can use \quote to use the same quote inside a string of that quote. I made that confusing. I'm sorry. But yeah, we've got single quotes here. If we want to use single quotes inside a single quote string, we can use \, or escaping that character to tell the string like, hey, this is part of the string. Ignore it. There, see? And then that'll show up as a regular quote. So that's that. What is our exercise here? Fix the string so it uses different quotes for the ref value, or escape the existing ones. Keep the double quote marks around the entire string. Okay, let's see what we got. We've got a string called inner HTML, which has quote, quote. Perfect. We want to keep that double quote mark around the entire string. So we've got a P element. If you're familiar with HTML, you'll be familiar with the opening and closing P. If you're not, totally fine. Go check out Jess's really good web development bootcamp if that's something you're interested in. Don't do both at the same time though, because it's, well, you can. It's just a lot of work. Anyway, so we got click here too, and then we've got an A element. There's our ref value. Home, return home, close the A, close the P. And you'll notice that the underlined squigglies start here. Let's take a look at the console real quick. Unknown, missing semicolon, and it's saying like, hey, here the line should have ended, but you're still typing stuff. Now we know from context, as Sally says here, we should be using single quotes, because what's happening is that the quote is ending, the string is ending here. So we have two options. One, as Sally suggests, is to use single quotes for the home value. There you go. Click here to return home. Fabulous. But we know that we can use another way to do this is with escaping the double quotes. This is done by using the \, and then the double quotes. \, double quotes. Now here's the thing. There is no wrong way to do this. A string is a string is a string. As Triple M says, or \quote home \quote. So that's absolutely a way you can do it. Carlos says you can use backticks. Interesting. Interesting. 3 options. Very true. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and run our tests. And that's working. We're halfway. Pat, pat. Oh, could we finish the whole thing in one day? Let's keep going. Let's catch use of assignment operator instead of the equality operator. Okay. So branching programs, i.e. ones that do different things if certain conditions are met, rely on if, else, and if-else statements. And we've else if, pardon me. And we've seen this before, right? We've done if, we've done else if, we've done else. Now we've come into situations where we've run into bugs because we might have forgotten to do a double quote. Double equals, pardon me, or a triple equals, or threequels, as I like to call it. This logic is spoken in English if x is equals y. And we see that in line 5 here, if x is equals to y. Let's keep going. As covered in previous challenges, the assignment operator is in JavaScript assigns a value. So equals doesn't check if two things are equal, but rather it assigns the value of the right side to the left side. We can see that in lines 1 and 2. Let x be equals to 7. Let y be equals to 9. Let result be equals to come, the string. The code below assigns x to be 2, which evaluates to true. Let's take a look. Ah, yes. So the problem here, right? Let x equals 1, let y equals 2. If x has its value to be assigned to y. Now, what are we saying here? We're checking, hey, did y's value get assigned to x? Yes. Yes, it did. So x will now be true. Sorry, x will now be 2. And we will execute the code inside this if statement, which is not what we want. We wanted to check that if x is equals to y. And this is where that distinction becomes really important. So this is why we want to be very careful when we're doing this sort of thing. Inside our if statements, if we want to check if two things are equal, to use double or three equals. In this example, the code block within the if statement will run for any value of y unless y is falsy. Remember we talked about that. For example, undefined, 0, false are all falsy. The else block, which we expect to run here, will not actually run. Now let's take a look at our code here. We're checking if x is equals to y, we set the result to be equal. Otherwise, we set the result to be not equal. And if we're comparing x and y, which remember are 7 and 9, it should print out not equal, but it's printing out equal because, as folks are correctly saying, line 5 should be a double equals. Or as Gene very well says, the assignment always happens. So we actually want to be doing if x is double equals to y. Now look at what's happening. Not equal. And I want to do something to really drive this home. Let's do a console log of x, y, and result. We got 7, 9, not equals. If I leave that assignment, notice what happens to x. 9, 9, and equal. So we are assigning that value. As Carlo very well says, we can also use 3 equals. So we can use double equals, which gives us 7, 9, and not equals, or 3 equals, which gives us 7, 9, and not equal. So there you have it. Fix the condition so the program runs the right branch and the appropriate value is assigned to result, which we can see being done there. Let's run our tests. And working fine. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. So what do we want to be doing next? We want to catch missing and open and closing parentheses after a function call. Let's take a look at what's going on here. We've got a function called get9, which assigns x to be 6, y to be 3, and we return x plus y. We let the result be get9, and we console log result. Now take a look at the output. The output is saying, all right, result is a function called get9. What's happening here? We have not assigned the return value of get9 to result. We have assigned the function get9 to result. Wait, what? So get9, as you remember, is a function. We are assigning the function to the variable. If we want to assign the return value of that function, we need to call that function. We need to invoke that function. This is done with the parentheses. Now take a look. Now that I've used the parentheses, result stores the value of 9, which is, of course, x equals 6, y equals 3, return x plus y. Now let's try some suggestions that folks are saying. Remove the equals in line 7. Remove the equals in lines. If I remove that, that's going to give me an error. So I'm not sure that's what we want to do. But Carlos has such a good idea that I was saving up. Carlos, you posted a spoiler. I love it. Can I call result if it's a function? Because, okay, I've restored my code, right? Result is now storing the function get9. So what does that mean? This is really weird. Because result is storing a function in it, I can actually call a function. See? Now I've called result with the parentheses. See? So result is a function. I called it. I've console logged that result. I've console logged that return value. It's 9. How wild is this? This is something called, this is a little bit going into what functional programming is about, where functions are treated just like numbers, strings, etc., because you can store them and then invoke them later, which is really weird. Yeah, folks are saying just use get9. That is the more sensible thing to do, isn't it? Yeah, let's call get9 and assign it to result. I love this. So fix the code so the variable result is set to the value returned from calling the function get9. Fabulous. Let's run our tests. That's working. We'll do a pat, and we'll move on. Oh, is it working because the get9 is assigned to result? Yes, exactly. Okay, let's catch arguments passed in the wrong order when calling a function. So continuing the discussion on calling functions, the next bug to watch out for is when a function's arguments are supplied in the incorrect order. I've been there. So if the arguments are meant to be different, then it's going to look a little bit weird. So let's take a look at our code a little bit. We've got raised to power with B and E as our parameters. And that returns math.pow, B and E. Now, if you're not familiar with math.pow, what this is doing is raising B to the power of E. For example, 2 to the power of 10 is 2 times itself 10 times. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which gives us 1024. I did not calculate that in my head. It's just a number I've memorized. So let's see what we've got. We've got base, which is set to 2, exp, which is set to 3, and we let the power be raised to power exp and base, which is giving us power. So we want to be raising 2 to the power of 3, which is 8, right? But look at this. Console log power, so 2 times 2 times 2, which is 4 times 2 is 8. But when we call raised to power, it's giving us 9. What's going on here? Now, a couple of things we can do, for example, to debug this is maybe check what B and E are. Because remember, we want to be raising B to E. Let's console log. And you know, I'm going to use backticks to be like, hey, the base is B and the exponent is E. That way I've got a nice fancy way of doing it. So base is 3, exponent is 2. And you'll notice that, hold on a minute, base is 2, exponent and 3. So what's going on is that these are swapped around. Look at what folks are saying in the chat. Swap. Sally says line 7, which is now line 8. I'll fix that in a minute, but you're absolutely correct. Odilanma says, swap the positions of exp and base in line 7. That should work. Carlos says, did you try variable to console log? I think that's what I just did. So yeah, let's try swapping those around. So instead of raised to power exp and base, I'm going to try base exp. Now let's take a look. Base is now 2, exponent is 3, and the return value is 8. So that is debugging arguments passed in the wrong order. Oh, just variable. Oh, you mean like no backtips or $? Okay, console log. Just this. E. Oh my goodness, Carlos, you're a genius. We used, what is this called? See, I already forget. Literal objects. Oh, look at you using some ES6 magic. That's nice, of course. So we've console logged an object made up of B and E, which then prints out really nicely in the console. I'm going to steal that. I've never thought of it. Thank you, Carlos. Nice. So there we can see B is 2 and E is 3. But again, that's what we expected. Let's run our tests. There we go. Pat. We're 75% of the way, and we've got 15 minutes left before Q&A. Oh, I forgot to say, folks. I mean, you already know this if you've been doing the bootcamp for a while, but if you have any questions and I'm not answering them, don't worry. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. So, and there you can bring all of your question. Let's catch off by one errors when using indexing. No sé programar says, is Carlos a student or a teacher at this point? I think you should replace me here. Love it. So off by one errors, sometimes called oboe, crop up when you're trying to target a specific index of a string or array to slice or access a segment, or when looping over the indices of them. JavaScript indexing starts at 0, not 1, which means the last index is always 1 less than the length of the item. Yeah, we've done that before. If you try to access an index equals to the length, the program may throw an index out of range reference error or print undefined. We've seen that before. When you use the string or array methods that take index ranges as arguments, it helps to read the documentation and understand if they are inclusive. The item at the given index is part of what's returned or not. Here are some examples of off by one errors. Now let's take a look. So we've got the alphabet, which is all 27, or is it 26? I always forget. 20-something letters. Actually, I think we could just copy this, right? Let's see. Let length equals alphabet.length. And here we've got a loop that goes from 0 to the length, and console logs each of them. Yeah, I'm going to copy this. I'm just going to delete everything in here. So we're printing out each letter in a loop right up until undefined. Oh, Carlos, look at you. Teaching is a really powerful tool to learn. It's true. Yeah. So what's going on here? We're printing all of the letters A through Z and then undefined. Why is that? That's because I can use console log to inspect the indexes. See, we're going through 0 to 26. And the letter at position 26 does not exist. But the reason it's getting printed is because we're going to I is smaller than or equals to len. When really we want to be going to len from 0 to len minus 1. Then we're going to go from 0 to Z. Let's try the other loop, see what we get. This one goes from from 1 to len. So it starts at B and ends at Z. That's because J must be smaller than len. So that's one. Let's try the last one. So now we're going from K equals 0 to K must be smaller than len. So that goes from A to Z. Perfect. Let me reset my code real quick. Are you sure you wish to reset this lesson? The editors and tests will be reset. Yeah, let's reset that so I've got my code back. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Count to 5. We've got a string of 1 through 5. We got length is equals to first5.length. And we got a for loop that goes from I to len. So I must be smaller than or equal to len and goes I++. We console log the letter through that loop, and then we call that function. So we got 2, 3, 4, 5, and undefined. Let's see our exercise. Fix the 2 indexing errors in the following function so all the numbers 1 through 5 are printed to the console. So the first thing we need to do is start at 0, because we're starting at 2. We need to start at the first letter, which is at position 0. We're starting at position or index 1. Oh, look at that. Orilanma's way ahead of me. Let's try to initialize I is equals to 0, which we've just done, and then use only smaller than. So we'll remove the equals, and there we go. 1 through 5. Thank you very much, Orilanma. Let's run our tests. Nice. Some teamwork. I love it. Pat, pat. Let's keep going. Use caution when reinitializing variables inside a loop. Sometimes it's necessary to save information, increment counters, or reset variables within a loop. Asante says we can also use len -1. Absolutely, we can. Sorry. A potential issue is when variables either should be reinitialized or aren't, or vice versa. This is particularly dangerous if you accidentally reset the variable being used for the terminal condition, causing an infinite loop. Printing variable values with each cycle of your loop by using console log can uncover buggy behavior related to resetting or failing to reset a variable. So let's take a look at our exercise. The following function is supposed to create a two-dimensional array with m rows and n columns of zeros. Unfortunately, it's not producing the expected output because the row variable isn't being reinitialized, set back to an empty array in the counter loop. Fix the code so it returns the correct 3x2 array of zeros, which looks like an array made up of 3 values, an array of 0, 0, an array of 0, 0, and an array of 0, 0. Okay, that's a wordy exercise. Let's look at our code. We've got a 0 array, which, oh, look, comments, nice. Creates a 2D arrays of m rows and n columns of zeros. We do a new array equals to empty array. We do row equals to empty array. And so we do a for loop of 0 through m. And then we do a for loop inside that other loop of 0 through n. Pushes n zeros into the current row to create the columns. So we push a 0 onto our row. And after we're done with that loop, that inner loop, we push the current row, which now has n zeros in it, to the array. New array.push row. We return new array. We do our matrix where we call 0 array of 3 and 2, and we console log matrix. So our console log is giving us this at the moment, which you'll recall is 3 rows made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. But we wanted 3x2. So we wanted 3 rows of 2 columns of zeros. But now we have 3 rows of 6 columns of 0. So the question is, what's happening? What we can do is use console logging to figure that out. So every time we start a new row, let me just console log. I'm going to first console log new array and see what's happening. Oh my goodness, look at all this stuff that's happening. So first, we have an empty array. Then we've got 1 row. Makes sense? Then we've got 2 rows, but hold on, each of them has 4 columns. Finally, we've got 3 rows, each of them made of 6. So something's going wrong every time we make a new row. Let me console log I as well, so that I can see what the value of m is at the time. There we can see 0, we can see 1, we can see 2. That's helpful, but it's not really telling me what's going on. Let me console log row. That's the same thing again. First, the row is empty. Then the row has 2 zeros. Then the row has 4 zeros. And by the end, we've got that matrix made up of rows of 6. So what's going on? Ideally, every time we start the loop, the row should be empty. And there's our key word. Because when we push a couple of zeros to every row, we're going to end up taking that existing row and adding 2 more zeros to it. So if you notice, there's our row. Oh, sorry. Here's our row at the beginning. First, it's empty. Then we've got a row with 2 zeros. Then that same row, which already had 2 zeros, adds 2 more zeros onto it. So if you take a look at this, this is taking that same row and expanding it 3 times. Check out what happens. Let me just go with console logging new array real quick. Check out what happens if I reset row to be an empty array. Console log. Let me console log row real quick. Now, every time that I start a new loop, that row is empty, which it should be. Look at everybody being so clever. A new row needs to be declared after the first loop. I think the row needs to be set back to empty array after the J loop. Exactly. At the beginning of our I loop, we just want to make sure that our row is empty. When we do that, let me console log new array real quick. Now we can see first it's empty. Then we've got 1 row. Then we've got 2 rows of each 2 zeros. And then we've got 3 rows, each of 2 zeros. So notice how using lots of console logging is really helpful here. Let's run our tests. There we go. Pat. We are 92% of the way there. Let's submit and do, I think this is our last one, the last challenge. The final topic is the dreaded infinite loop. Anyone been there? I have. Loops are great tools when you need to program your code to run a code block a certain number of times or until a condition is met. But they need a terminal condition that ends the looping. Infinite loops are likely to freeze or crash the browser and cause general program execution mayhem, which no one wants. There was an example of an infinite loop in the introduction to this section. It had no terminal condition to break out of the while loop inside loopy. Do not call this function. Let's take a look. So we've got a function loopy, and it's checking while true, we console log hello world. Oh, I really want to call it though. But let's take a look at what's happening. So every time, remember how while loops work. It checks that this condition returns true. If it doesn't return true, this loop will stop running. So because this condition is always true, it's gonna be stuck here and console log hello world a bunch of times. Do you know what, folks? I'm gonna do it. I'm feeling brave. Let's call loopy and see what happens. So there's our hello world. Look at the thingy here on the right. Look at how much scrolling I have to do. Now, FreeCodeCamp is helpful because eventually it'll say, hey, there's a potential infinite loop detected on line 8. Tests may fail if this is not changed. So, okay, FreeCodeCamp is being helpful to say like, hey, I think there's an infinite loop here. So we don't want to do that. It's the programmer's job to ensure that the terminal condition, which tells the program when to break out of the loop code, is eventually reached. One error is incrementing or decrementing a counter variable in the wrong direction from the terminal condition. Another one is accidentally resetting a counter or index variable within the loop code instead of incrementing or decrementing it. So far, so good. Let's take a look at the exercise now. The myfunc function contains an infinite loop because the terminal condition I is not equals to 4 will never evaluate to false and break the looping. I will increment by 2 each pass and jump right over 4 since I is odd to start. Fix the comparison operator in the terminal condition so the loop only runs for I less than or equals to 4. So let's see, what do we got? We got a for loop, I is equals to 1. In order for the loop to stop, I must not be equals to 4. No, sorry. The loop will only run as long as, I is not equals to 4. I gets incremented by 2 each step. So let's call that myfunc. You'll see it's very familiar to before. It's still going. If I scroll all the way down, it'll say like, hey, there's a potential infinite loop detected on line 2. So how do we catch this? Let's console log I instead of still going. Now look, it's starting at 1, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. It's skipping past 4. So I will never be equal to 4. So we've got an infinite loop. Carlos, that's odd. Orinarma says something helpful here. We did something similar. Let's try the smaller than or equals to only. Timofil says I must be equals or smaller than or equals to 4. So let's try that. Smaller than or equals to 4. Now it only does 1 and 3. And as soon as I is 5, the loop's like, nah, we are not smaller than or equals to 4 anymore. So good catch, everybody. Let's run the tests. Hey, look at us getting to the end. So we've done it. Pat, pat, with only 1 minute late. I think that's pretty great. Nicely done. You just completed debugging. Become a monthly supporter for a nonprofit. As said, FreeCodeCamp depends on nonprofit donations. If you can afford it, of course, feel free to donate a couple bucks a month. I do it on another account, but of course, no stress too. Now, Kami has a question. Before we get into Q&A, I just want to give out some homework. Now you're thinking, wait a minute, Ramon, we just finished debugging. Why are you giving us homework? Here's why. Tomorrow, we're going to be starting basic data structures. Yeah. So I want that tomorrow we do some of the exercises in advance. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because if you read them, use an array to store a collection of data, access an array's contents using bracket notation, use push and unshift, use pop and shift. You've already done this before in basic JavaScript. So the homework for tomorrow is to do the first 4 exercises, and tomorrow we will start with remove items using splice. So again, homework for tomorrow is to do the first 4 exercises of basic data structures, and we will start with remove items using splice. Okay, so that's the homework. Let's jump into Q&A, and I want to start right away with Kami's question. When I was doing the previous challenge, I separated the for loop and it worked. Any idea why? What do you mean by separating the for loop? I'm sorry, I don't quite understand. Let's go and look at that again. You separated the for loop. Yeah, could you send maybe just a line of the for loop to show me what you mean? I want to come back to that because I don't quite understand. I'm sorry. Any other questions while we wait for Kami to type that up? Let's see. Asante has a question for us. I hope typing type of variable doesn't really change anything because the concept still holds. Oh, you mean type of with the brackets? Let's see. Console log type of, do this every time. Okay. It would appear it does not. I usually see it without the brackets. So maybe for consistency's sake, again, type of is an old remnant from older JavaScript, and it's a bit quirky. So you'll most of the time see it here. It's kind of like deleting from an object. Hold up. Delete a hello a. Up. Let me try this a little bit better. So we've got an let object equals a hello. Yeah. So I have an object here with hello in it. I deleted that object. You'll notice I'm doing it without Whew. You notice I deleted it without parentheses. Yeah, it's just a remnant of old JavaScript, I think. So let's see if Kami, line 5 to 14. Wait, what? I've got line 5 here, but not. Sorry, I'm not sure. I cut line and pasted in 7. Hold on, let me. So here's our, wait, am I looking at the wrong exercise, Kami? I'm sorry. Give me 1 sec. Is it this one? Aha. Aha, okay. You cut line 12, 13, 14 and pasted in 7. Okay. 12, 13, 14. Okay. You pasted that in 7. Okay. Well, let's see what happens. So now you've separated the 2 for loops. Now I understand. I'm sorry. So you've separated the for loops. So first you're adding in row. You're adding in the 3 row. Okay. Sorry. Carry on. Oh, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this. Carlos says it's easier to read and a better solution. I'm not sure I agree, but let's go into why in a second. I actually, oh, look, my Roman converter is still here. Let me process that and see. Let's see what's going on here. Visualize execution. So why does this work? First, we're calling 0 array. Now let's go to the next step. So we create a new array. But again, thank you to Sil for this incredible tool. We've got our empty row. And what we're doing is pushing the row, how many times? 3 times into our array. Right? Then we're going from 0 to n, and we're taking that row, which notice it's 3 times the same row, and just pushing a 0 onto that same row. That's why it's working, because we're taking the same reference to a row and pushing the zeros to it. If this variable were, if this were in another programming language, this would not, if this were not, I'm saying that wrong. This I would consider dangerous in a programming language where the references are not done. Yeah, because in the array, you see we've got 3 references to the same array. If we were redeclaring that array, or if we wanted to have different values, then it would work. Let me show you an example. Let's say this exercise were just a touch different. Okay, hold on. Let me reset it to the way it was. Okay. What if we wanted the first row to have zeros, the second row to have ones, and the third row to have twos? Instead of pushing 0, we would push I. Yeah? 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. If we wanted to fix this so that the first row is 0, the second row is ones, and the third row is twos, we would use the solution of row must be equals a new array. Then we have first row, second row, third row. But watch what happens if we try using the separated loops. Lines 12, 13, and 14. Can't do that anymore because I don't have access to I anymore. I don't know which row I'm currently in. So you see what I mean? Because if I do it with J, look what happens. Now I've just got 0 and 1. As Michael says, the 3 references are, I wouldn't call it bad coding, but it's a coincidence that it works. Let's put it that way. We should redefine the variable row inside the first nested loop. Because as soon as we change that ever so slightly, notice how it collapses. So this is a good solution. It's a clever solution, but it's not quite right. I hope that helps. Thank you for, it's a good catch. Thank you. Let's see what other questions we've got. On our local browsers, do we get warned about possible infinite loops or do we just get spammed with hello world? I don't know. It might depend on the browser as well, huh? Let's try it. I'm going to open up my dev tools real quick. So I've back on my, so my funk. I'm scared, y'all. What I called my funk. Let result equals my funk. Console log result. Look. Ah, okay, cool. So it did try. It called it 1,114 times. 1,714 times. Still going. And then it detected a potential infinite loop. Phew, okay. Okay. So that's not too bad. But I think it depends. I think I'm calling it specifically from FreeCodeCamp, which stops it. So as Carlos says, as Sally says, it normally crashes or locks up your computers. Yeah. I have broke Firefox and Chrome's a few times already. LOL. Well, you didn't break them. You just crashed them. Sorry, Galbrush. What was the next question, please? In the Roman numeral converter, where did you get the converter process numeral function? I searched MDN. No specific function was an exact match. Please elaborate on how you derive the converter function. You're not going to find it on MDN. Let me just bring up my solution. That's under settings. Scroll down. There we go. Roman numeral converter show code. Process numeral. If you go back and watch, if you go back to the previous lesson and watch the video, what I did was I showed how I came up with this process to, and then extracted it into a class. So this process numeral is not something built into JavaScript. It's something that we came up with. Oh, we have a possible answer. Oh, Orilanma puts it much better than I do. Thank you. We named the function numeral converter. It doesn't mean or do something specific. You can name it whatever you want. That's a great point. Let's do that just to show that it's possible. Let me take my code, copy it 3 times. I don't know why. Roman numeral converter. Oh, wait, it's still there. Fabulous. Yeah, so as Orilanma says, we can call this whatever we like. Let's call this process symbol and value. But first, we're going to get error. Converter.process numeral is not a function. That's because I need to replace it here. So in essence, I gave it the name process numeral, but it can be anything we like, and it'll still work. I came up with this class to sort of encapsulate that knowledge inside the class. What do we have next? My question is a little bit out of today's topic, but it will be helpful to explain it. How can string builder be used to avoid string problems? Thank you, Timmy Phil. I'm going to be super honest. I have no idea what string builder is. So let's go on MDN and look up string builder. Huh. Is it string builder? What is string builder? Hold on a moment. Let's go back to just any old exercise and start working on string builder there. Console log string builder. String builder is not defined. I'm sorry, Timmy Phil. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Let's go on a search engine and look up JavaScript string builder. So, is there a regular implementation in JavaScript? People are saying, where did I see that? Somebody essentially said, there is not. Here we go. There is no built-in support for building strings. You have to use concatenation instead. Yeah, sorry, Timmy Phil. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with string builders in JavaScript. But if you have a link, I'd love it if you shared it with us, please. Let's go to the next question. Galbrush is very helpfully telling me it might be a Java thing and not a JavaScript thing. Let's see. Why does the console sometimes repeat two outputs? For example, you console log example and the console logs example twice. Let's have a look. So console log example. Yeah, that prints out example. Let's go to our dev tools real quick. People are saying in the chat it is a Java thing and also C#. That would explain why I didn't know it. So why are the consoles sometimes repeat outputs? Let me first console clear real quick, just to make sure we're at a clean start. Now you're saying something. So here's the thing: every time I run the, you know how FreeCodeCamp will automatically run the program. Check it out. There's an example, right? Because it printed out, it ran the program, it printed example to the FreeCodeCamp console, but it also printed it to the developer tools one. Now, if I run the program again, I'm just going to add an enter. Check it out. This one still has example. Now, here's your question. Example is now there twice. The question is, why is it there twice where here it's only once? And that's because that's actually explained in one of the earlier lessons of debugging. Hold on one sec. Here. Here's the key part. The FreeCodeCamp console is cleared each time your code runs, whereas the browser one is not. Let me show you what I mean. Let's console log the number 1. It'll show up in the FreeCodeCamp console. And if you look at the browser one, there's still my 2 examples and the number 1. But watch what happens when I console log 2. FreeCodeCamp one gets automatically cleared each time my code runs. So there's only the number 2. The browser one did not get cleared. I need to clear it manually. That's why things will show up more than once in the browser dev tools. It's a good question. Thank you, Ede. I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Do I know any testing code tools? Ooh. Okay, this is a little bit off topic. So we might be stepping into some more advanced territory. However, there are packages. There are JavaScript packages available on the internet for running tests automatically against your code. Now, here's the thing. We've been running those tests all this time. You see, down here, we've got some tests, right? You should use console log to print the output variable. You should use console clear to clear your browser console. You should clear the console after you log. Let's try some of these out. Output. When I run the tests, hit enter, You'll see you should use console log passed because I used console log, but I did not use console clear, and I did not clear the console. These are tests that are running automatically when I hit run the tests. It's not that, okay, it's kind of automatically to verify that my code is correct. So in the back, FreeCodeCamp has written some software that automatically checks that these conditions are met. These are called tests. And the way these are done can be done with several packages in JavaScript. I think the most common one right now is called jest. So that's JEST. So this is a little bit beyond the scope of the bootcamp. But if you're ever interested in checking out how these work, I recommend taking a look at this. I'm going to put a link in the chat. Again, this is beyond the scope of the bootcamp right now. But again, this is how tests are written. Let's take a look, see if we've got an example here. Let me make it a little bit larger. Let me see if there's an example of one. I think it would be nice. Get started. Take a look at this one here. So we've got we're importing the function sum, right? Which is a function that returns a plus b. Now here we've written a test. First we write the text of the test, adds 1 plus 2 to equal 3. And then we have a little function that says, hey, I expect the calling sum of 1 and 2 to be equals to 3. So if the function sum with the parameters 1 and 2 returns 3, this test will pass. If it does not, this test will fail. So what we do is we write lots of these tests to automatically check that our code is doing what we expect it to do. Now, again, a little bit beyond the scope of this bootcamp, but I love this question. Thank you, Carlos. Do we have any other questions, or are we good? I think that's all the questions answered. Didn't even drink all of my water. Cool. Well, totally fine. We can call it a day. Good job, everybody. Just a quick pat. Now remember, homework for tomorrow, once again, is to do the first 4 exercises of basic data structures. Tomorrow we'll start there at remove items using splice. Once again, the first 4 are the homework. As always, if you've got any questions or answers, please go to the forum. That's group.classcentral.com. Or there's the Discord. You'll find the link there as well. I will say thank you all so much. And remember, you're doing great. You're learning loads. If there are things that don't click, don't worry. Practice, ask questions. If you've, sometimes we can't cover everything during the live session. So you might be like, hey, Ramon, skip this thing. It does happen. Follow that curiosity. Ask those questions. People will answer them and then be grateful for getting the opportunity to try and put things to words. So I will say, have a wonderful day, get lots of rest, and I'll see you tomorrow at the next session. Bye, everybody. Take care.